Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I'm a voice teacher. I'm going to be reacting to and analyzing Marcelito Pomoy singing The Prayer by Celine Dion and Andrea Bocelli. Let me know if I got that name wrong.
Wish 1075.
I pray you'll be alright and watch us where we go and help us to be wise in times when we don't know. This be our prayer.
I'm laughing because my mom used to play this song on repeat. I think this was the only song in her iTunes library for like years because you would just come home and she would be listening to the prayer on repeat, and she's going to be watching this, and so the rest of this is for you, Mom. He sounds really, really good. He sounds very, very clear. I believe it's all falsetto. He's going down to like a G so far, a G below middle C. So you can carry falsetto down that low. And when he gets to the lowest parts of his range with it, or the lowest parts of the song, the sound loses some of that clarity and strength that it had at the higher part, where that's just what happens with falsetto. When you start bringing it down too low, you're not going to be able to get anything to buzz. You're not going to be able to get a full sound out of it, which is proven so far. Does that mean that what he's doing up high is bad? No, it just means that it's a non-traditional way to sing. Usually, this is more of how a countertenor would sing, someone who is trained as a countertenor and just has this clear, boyful sound up at the top part of his range. So it sounds really good, sounds really clear. I'm still coping with just the surprise of him going up, and that kind of threw me off.
We lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace. To a place where we'll be safe.
When he went up to place and grace, he kind of opened it to place and grace, which is often a substitute that in the classical world, some people tend to prefer it, changing anything that goes from to ah, if there's an ah written. Also, just at that part of his range, he does need to drop his jaw a little bit, and if he wasn't getting enough of that on the closed a, it does drop the jaw a little bit. It's a very classical, traditional style of singing. Like, this isn't the way that most contemporary pop singers sing.
La luce che tu dai
I pray you will find your light
nel cuore resterà
and hold within our heart.
a ricordarci
The stars go out each night.
eterna stella sei.
I like how they've edited it down so that you can do this as one part. One time in a concert, I performed the song The Erlkönig, which is traditionally performed just all as a baritone song. It doesn't go really high, it doesn't go really low, it's just baritone. I saw a video of someone who did it with the elf, so there are a few different characters in it. There's the boy, there's the dad, there's the elf, and there's the narrator. And he did everything, or he did the elf voice and the narrator voice and the little boy voice up an octave. He did it as a countertenor, which I thought brought this really interesting view to it because it gives a lot more differentiation between characters. And when I did it, I did the same thing, but I did the narrator down lower also. It's really hard jumping between countertenor land and baritone land, or high baritone tenor land, like what he's doing with the Bocelli part. It's really difficult because usually if you're going to go into all falsetto like he's doing at the top, you can kind of blend it down, but it becomes very, very light. And so if you're going to get the sound of the Bocelli, you need to then come in with a little bit more chord closure. And jumping between this place where there is some chord closure, but it's just light, and I'm not even willing to say that it's a true falsetto, even though it is pretty disconnected, because it's such a clear sound. I think that he could blend it back down, but I don't know, it's such a weird thing because no one knows, and people will use these words like head voice and falsetto. They'll use it to describe a coordination when they're meaning a sound. And so they get thrown around, and people say that women don't have falsettos, they only have head voice, and men don't have head voice, they only have falsetto, and all of it. But it doesn't make sense to me. And it all just complicates the problem, which is what is happening with this and what can he do with it? But using all of those terms is just really complicated because a lot of people think it means one thing, where another group of people think it means a completely different thing. And so consolidating those two libraries of information is really, really difficult. It's hard for people who have one definition of a word to talk to someone who has a different definition of a word and really be able to communicate. It's really hard. So it also makes it so that we're not focusing on what's important, which I believe is it getting him the sound that he needs? And is it repeatable? And is it healthy? Healthy in a way that it's not going to cause any lasting damage, or that it's not going to harm his instrument in some way. That's kind of my definition of it. And I think that what he's doing is exactly what he wants to do. It's giving a clear delineation of which character is which. Because rather than just going between the two ranges, he's also going between two vocal production styles, which sounds more like a classical disconnected woman up at the top. I know that Celine doesn't do that, but that's what it sounds like, and it sounds like a bigger voiced male at the bottom. So I think that what he's doing is working fine. I don't care whether it's falsetto or head voice as long as it's being successful in what he's doing. But I think that the more chord closure you can get on it, and the more you can make these two voices sound like the same voice, the easier it's going to be. It's hard jumping between the two completely different coordinations. It's just exhausting. And so that's the only thing that I need to say about that. The only thing he says after talking for 10 minutes.
Nella mia preghiera,
Let this be our prayer
quanta fede c'è,
when shadows fill our day.
lead us to
Eyes, guide us with your grace.
give us faith so we'll be saved.
I would love for him to treat his baritone range more like how he's treating the top, in that I feel like he's trying to create an extraordinary amount of space, and in doing so is kind of muffling the sound a little bit. When he's up in the higher part of his range, it's very, very clear, and that's my preferred coloring. I also think that it's easier, just personally, it feels easier on myself, and for most of my students, it generally feels easier. But it does create like the distinct sound. I just would probably work on that to make sure that we're getting as full of a sound as we can from his voice, and as true of a voice, and that we're remaining as true to his authentic voice as we can, rather than trying to sound like someone else.
Sogniamo un mondo senza più violenza, e un mondo di giustizia, di speranza. Ognuno di la mano a sua vicina, simbolo di pace, di fraternità. La forza che ci dà.
I do really like it. I want to preface everything that I'm saying by saying that I do like the sounds that he's creating. I think we can make them easier. I think that he can create these a little bit easier. When he went up to that B flat, he didn't have any vibrato on the sound. You could see some veins popping out. It looked very compressed. Usually if we don't hear vibrato, it's a sign of some extra tension, and when it's coupled with the visual of just looking kind of locked up, like you're just bearing down a little bit too hard, it's harder. It's just harder to do than if we have a little bit freer of a chord, if we allow that vibrato in, if we don't tense up quite as much and instead have a good balance between air and muscle, where right now he has a very high pressure system underneath his vocal cords which are resisting it, and then those little vocal cords are doing their best to try to resist it, but they're very small and it's creating all this pressure and it's hard, and the oscillation just doesn't stay as true once we get into that kind of a situation. What I would want to do first is make sure that he's using vowels that aren't creating weird additional tension, because if we can make sure that his vowels are all tuned in a way that just works for this song, then we won't have to think about much else. Like the vowels do most of the work for us. On a second part, I want to make sure that his tongue isn't pulling back. I believe that when he's getting this sound, this larger operatic sound that it sounds like he's trying to get, which is more of a popera sound, it's still pop music, but with like pop classical music. So it's a combination. When he's getting that sound, he's trying to create space in the back of his throat, and in doing so is retracting his tongue slightly. It's allowing his larynx to drop a little bit, and that's also helping him get this sound. Everything that he's doing is helping him get this sound. To me, it just doesn't sound as free as I think it could, or that I prefer in my singers, but the sound that is happening is very intentional. You can see also he just kind of reached his body up when he got to that high note, which is an indicator that things are hard usually if we're just going up a little bit or letting our body get tied to a way that we sing something. Like if we can only sing a high note, if we reach up like this and go like this with our heads, that's going to severely limit the amount of places that you can sing that high note. Not every character when they're singing a high note is going to be doing this physically. So just little indicators like that make me feel like it's harder than it sounds, because I know that it sounds easy and clear, but I don't think it is as much. I could be wrong, but I've been there, and it's hard.
It's so we'll find in another song to love. Let this be our prayer. Let this be our prayer. Just like every child. Just like every child.
So his top notes are forward, they're ringy, they don't have very much chord closure, I think. It's mostly resonance that's creating this rather than having a more full buzz at the vocal cord level. When he goes back down to baritone land, it's actually not even as full of a chord closure as when he's up here. Or it is, and he's just, like, the vowels aren't tuning as well as they are for his high notes. But it goes from this really clear sound to a breathier sound on his bottom notes. Again, just going back and forth between two coordinations like that is very tiring, and it can start introducing strain in weird ways that are hard to handle.
Need to find a place, guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be saved.
See, it's a very open sound, or it's a very open vowel, which I think he's doing on purpose. And then at the end, there was a little inconsistency with the rest of it, which showed kind of what I'm feeling. Love it. Oh, that sound is so good. That guy has a lot of talent. Like, he's really, really good, and he's an expressive singer, and he's a good musician. I think he can be a better singer in that he's using his instrument more efficiently, which makes sense. He's still pretty young. He's probably still learning things. We all can continue to learn, and that's fine. We can have things that we need to improve on and be really good. you can always do that, and that's okay, and it's still worth looking into whether or not this is the most efficient way of doing something, because I believe that if something is hard all the time, if it's like physically demanding and you have to go repeat that event over and over every time that you go practice, why would you want to do it? Why would you want to do something that's that hard all the time? I don't think he's all the way to that point. I think that he's doing a lot of things right as well. It's just there's some extra tension, and I feel like that is from him trying to create a specific sound, more to try to sound like Andrea Bocelli or like a classical singer should, rather than like how he would sing this as a baritone in his situation. Because you could still have the character delineation with singing in with really good technique. It's just, it's going to sound more like him. And I think that in this, it didn't sound like he sounded like himself. It sounded like he was trying to sound like someone else or trying to be something. And I really hope I'm wrong with all of this, but I have sang way too many songs like this and been very concerned with trying to create a lot of space and have had a ton of tension. And it's hard and it's not fun, and I've cried over it, and it's not worth the art, in my opinion, for it to be that difficult to produce when there's a second way to produce it that's not as difficult. So obviously this was worth the art. He's doing things really well and being a good performer, but he has some things that he can work on, in my opinion. But at the same time, that's super exciting, because if you know things you can improve on, then you can go improve on them and become really, really good. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Go click the bell next to my name or wherever it is if you are interested in getting notifications about my videos whenever I post them. And if you're interested in signing up for a voice lesson with me, go to my website, vocalease.net. Thank you.